Man, am I glad you're here. The thing that we're going to talk about today, a lot of people are just don't want to talk about. They're afraid to talk about, in fact. So they do a lot of things to avoid talking about what we're going to talk about today, which is they bury their head in their sand. They pretend they don't see what they see. They pretend they don't know what they know, or they minimize, or they rationalize. And of course, what we're talking about today is the impact of addiction on kids. It's not for the faint of heart. But here's what I promise to you. If you are willing to sit through this today with me and really be willing to deep dive, to take to go a little, to go spelunking with me. All right. We're going to go into the cave that most people fear to enter because I promise you, deep within that cave we're afraid to enter are all the keys to the kingdom, all the keys to restoring your family, aligning with your children, even if they're small, all the way to adult, rectifying the damage that has been done, resurrecting the whole family, restoring peace. So the keys are here. I'm going to give you the keys today to restoring your family. But I'm going to tell you that in order to have those keys, you've got to go splunking. You've got to go deep into the cave of impact to discover exactly how addiction has impacted your babies. Now, by the way, these kids, when does this start? Well, this can happen at any time. You know, kids could be growing up just fine, and then all of a sudden they're exposed to an addicted parent who that was like a sleeping dragon, and then it awoke. And now they had a great parent their whole childhoods, and now they're like, who's this Jekyll and Hyde? All of a sudden, I don't recognize daddy anymore. It could be they grew up their whole entire childhood and they've been exposed to addiction their whole lives. And it's just like old hat. And it's like, oh, it's just par for the course. Oh, that's just dad or that's just mom. And I want to tell you why it's so important to not breeze over or glaze over anything because kids are resilient, so we think they're fine, especially because most kids, I will tell you this, most kids that grow up in an addicted family dynamic are fine, but not the fine in the sense where they're thriving, they're amazing, they're happy, they're joy filled, they're making all their dreams come true. They're fine in the way where they have to be fine, so they're just fucking fine. How are you? I'm fine. Nope, I'm fine. And most kids are going to tell you they're fine because they don't want to be an additional problem to the already mounting problems that they see inside of an addicted family dynamic. So most kids are just going to want to kind of disappear and pretend that everything's fine. So it creates in children a myriad of multiple personalities. That's what addiction does. Like you're born into a family dynamic and you're born yourself. A child comes into the world fully capable of all the love, all the power, all the wonderful things, creating everything in life, loving, leading, creating, being, all the things that we're meant to do. But when we're born into an addicted dynamic, it's like planting that tree in concrete. Sure, that tree will grow, but it'll grow freaking wonky. Its branches won't have an opportunity to fully extend, to fully become its authentic, most glorious, biggest empowered self. It's restricted by where it's planted. And so for you knowing, oh, this concrete that my little tree was planted in left a mark, you're going to be able after today to have access to information that most people don't even dare to gather. And with that information, you're going to be able to open doorways to conversations with your children, whether they're small all the way to adults. If you or yourself, by the way, this is for two sets of people today. This is for people who are co-parenting with an addict who never got better and they're still stuck with the bag. And they're like, how the hell am I supposed to help my kids be okay? Or it's for the addict or alcoholic who got into recovery. Bless you. Amazing. Look at you. Wow. I'm so proud of you. Look, and I don't mean that in a condescending way. I know how hard that is. I know how amazing that is. And so now you in recovery, now that you have your sea legs and you're starting to, be able to handle, there's a time in your recovery where you will need to seek out the people you've impacted and discuss the impact you've made upon them. Here's why this is so important. I came about this deep desire in my heart to right the wrongs that is done to children inside of an addicted dynamic. I mean, my whole life, I've I've been this way, probably because I was born into it myself. My dad was an alcoholic. If you've been around here, by the way, I'm Heidi. Hello. It's nice to see you. If you're new here, let me take a minute and say, welcome home. I'm so glad you found me. This is a really big place, YouTube and the podcast world. And listen, I really believe that if you found me, it's on purpose. It's by divine design that I am meant to pour into you today, that you are meant to hear something you need to hear. In fact, let's just set that intention together. Okay. You've made it here. My wish for you is that you hear something you need to hear today. The light goes on. You see something you need to see today that you haven't seen before that makes all the difference in the way that you approach your relationships. You feel something you needed to feel today, which is leaves an opening for you to have a release or to a portal to change because you're willing to feel the depths of the impact. Or if you yourself are a child or a loved one and you grew up with an addicted parent, that there's hope. You're not broken. One of the biggest questions a child asks themselves for their entire life whenever they grow up in an addicted household is one primary question. And that question is, what's wrong with me? You can see here there's a book in the background. This is a giant blow up canvas of a book that I wrote called What's Wrong with Me? And today I'm going to go over this with you and teach it to you as a tool. This book is a tool. Book is very tiny. Look at this tiny little book. This book is the smallest little book. Okay. But this book is a book designed to open doors, open portals, open opportunities. Put your cave diving gear on and your headlamp on and go spelunking so that you can excavate the impact. Because at the end of this is a message of hope. It's a message of compassion. It's a message of understanding of how, because we grew up in this dynamic and we're plagued by this question, what's wrong with me? What to do about it, how to break free from that broken mentality that most of us feel that grow up in addiction. And by the way, I could insert addiction, dysfunction, toxicity, abuse. I could really just, it's a myriad, really. Addiction is just the same as narcissism. It acts the same as narcissism. It acts the same as, a lot of different dysfunctional behaviors. So it's not just addiction, but we are focusing on that today because how this book came about was I got recruited. My husband and I were living on the road, being steeped in personal development. He was working with Tony Robbins. I had been a student of John Maxwell and was teaching leadership and relationships and all these different types of things. And we got recruited to teach personal development, self-love, self-empowerment inside of a drug and alcohol treatment center. And traditionally there were programs of AA, which there's nothing wrong with that. But what we found is we really believed, we came from a philosophy that as a man thinketh, so I am. And we wanted to give another framework for people to heal, which is, yeah, addiction is something I have, not who I am. Our job is to figure out and excavate our authentic selves because we can to return home to our fullest God-given potential, right? And be all that we can be and learn to love and be loved to our fullest potential. In order to do that, a rising tide, we believe, floats all boats. So we find a way to find the lovability or the goodness within the addict or alcoholic and call to that goodness, call to that awesomeness so that that's what we're calling forward. When you call to toxicity and you call to dysfunction, that's what you're bringing forth to you. So when we were working with these addicts and alcoholics, we were trying to find a portal, a doorway to helping them start to see, oh, I'm in there somewhere, right? And if I can, every addict is, and every human being is on a spectrum of light and dark, and we all live on the spectrum of light and dark. And some of us, we're all kind of, hopefully, a lot of us that are called to the light will always be called to the light, even in our darkest times. There will always be a glimmer of hope, a little bit of a shift in perspective. Those that are called in the dark or stay in the dark don't have that, and that's our job to release those people and let them go. But those that want to come to the light, those of us that are light workers or bearers of light, oftentimes in order to shine that light and bring people to the light, we have to be willing to go into the dark, which is the cavern and the cave where people are hiding, right? So when I was working at this drug and alcohol treatment center for 10 years, I had a group called Adult Children of Alcoholics. And in this class is where I would gather all of the people who are challenged with substance use disorder and talk about the impact that they made on their families. And I can't tell you how extremely frustrating it was for me that whenever I would go to excavate the impact so we can make some headway, right? Tell me about how you've impacted your family. I'd say to the addict or alcoholic, tell me how your using has hurt your children. Very direct questions in love. Why is it so important for an addict and alcoholic to know how they've hurt their kids? Because if you don't know what the hell you've done, how do you know what steps to take? And by the way, if you, as a survivor of someone's addiction, don't take time to see how you've been impacted, how you've been hurt, you will not be able to effectively forgive. You'll do like a toxic forgiveness or a lame attempt at forgiveness, like, well, they did the best they could. And so everybody did what they could and it wasn't their fault and they didn't know any better. But if you effectively blame, and this is a good thing, by the way. Blame is just, intentional responsibility of like where it went awry, right? Your behavior directly impacted me. That's blame, effective blame. And here's how I still carry that behavior around with me today, effective blame. But now it's my job to heal those wounds that were created by your addiction. Now I'm taking responsibility for myself. And now when I start to heal, and only after I've started to heal, will I be able to in turn effectively forgive. Let's just go over that one more time. Okay, I know that's a lot. I will spiritually bypass, psychologically bypass forgiveness and just sweep it under the rug and say everybody did the best they could and go on with my life and pretend like nothing happened. And it'll show up and I'll be a shit show in my relationships. It'll show up in my success. I'll have a success failure. I'll be addicted to self-sabotage. When I don't blame effectively and forgive effectively, I'm a walking self-saboteur. And I don't know why I keep blowing my life up and hurting myself over and over again because I'm not connecting the dots that it's to my childhood experiences with addiction or my adult experiences with addiction. So I bypass it. I never get better. Or I take a pause. I do a deep dive. I go splunking in the cave. I figure out how addiction has impacted my life with the intention that I am going to take responsibility for those wounds as an adult and start to heal them so then I can effectively blame you, take responsibility, and now effectively forgive you. People can't forgive because you can't get dry under a waterfall. Did you ever wonder why somebody has a hard time forgiving? It's because you're continually exposed to the same shit over and over again. How can you heal what's still happening? You cannot. So if you're still in a relationship with an addict and alcoholic, I'm going to ask you that while you go through this spelunking expedition to see how you've been impacted, that you take a little pause and a time out from that person, and you certainly don't share it half cocked. You go and sit with this book with yourself or with a therapist or with me, because I wrote the damn thing, long enough to understand your impact on your life. And then when you're healed, then you can go back and have those tough conversations you need to have. Right. But this is a job that you are going to do. This is an expedition that you're going to have with yourself or with your kids and or with a therapist. This book was made for therapists. This book was made for treatment centers. This book was made for healing practitioners, for clinicians. It's made as a communication tool. We are going to get into it. I know you're getting excited. That's good. See, we're building excitement for you to actually want to do the damn thing. I like that. Okay. But let me tell you why I wrote it. Back into the situation with the impact, I would be in these groups and I would have maybe 100. We had a huge auditorium at this place that I taught at for like 10 years. And I loved it. It was so unbelievably amazing. This treatment center. I'm going to create something like it again. It's since closed, but I feel the call to create another thing. So if you want to be a benefactor and help me build it, let me know. But I really want to create this place where people are encouraged to heal through, you know, experiences, something an alternative to the old way. So anyway, okay, I digress. Let me get back into it. I'm at the drug and alcohol treatment center. I'm talking to like 100 people at a time. I'm trying to get the impact that they have had on their family. And invariably, every single time I start to have the discussion, there's one or two people that know, take responsibility of the impact they've had, but there's way more people in the room. 80% of the people in the room are like, well, they don't even know. And I'm going to go into my accent. I was born in Pennsylvania near West Virginia, and I'm an Appalachia girl. I was born in the mountains, so that accent can come out real quick. So it's not like a slam on anybody, but I want to say like it's kind of this mentality. Well, my kids don't know anything; they don't know nothing. They don't. I'd ask them. They say, "Well, they have no idea that I drink. They don't even know that I use drugs." And I'd be like, "Really? Your kids don't know you use drugs?" No, they don't have any idea. They don't know anything about that. I mean, I drink after they go to bed, or I go in the garage when I do my drugs. They don't even see me. They have no idea that I do that. No, Well, are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure like there's been like family discussions, or maybe it gets heated sometimes, or you go out to the garage and they're kind of wondering, where is dad? When you're out there. No, they don't care. They don't even know I'm gone. I mean, they don't worry about where I'm at or what I'm doing. One of my girls is never home. She just didn't even come home anymore. In fact, she's real disrespectful. You know what I mean? She doesn't even, she's doing her own thing. I think she's using drugs, you know? I mean, shit. She's out. God only knows how many hours a day, you know, doing her thing. She can't talk about me because she's just as bad. And I got my other boy. My boy is so good. He's a football star. He plays on a team, and then sometimes I go to his football games, but he doesn't want me to go anymore. I don't know why. He told me not to come to his games anymore. So I was like, all right, fine. I guess you get nervous or something. I think he's nervous. You know what I mean? I think when I do I watch him and stuff, and he's like wants to make me proud. Well, wants to make me proud and stuff. So he didn't want me to come. I think I make him nervous. And then I'll say something like, "Well, did you ever go to a football game and act like an ass? You know what I mean? Did you ever fall in a bleacher or call out something and distract?" No, I mean, not really. I mean, there was a couple times I probably had a couple drinks, but I don't really drink, that much. I just drink, like I said, every little bit. I mean, there's so much freaking denial. You can't have addiction without having denial. It's impossible. It's kind of like I have the flu, but I don't have a fever, or I have lung cancer, but I don't have a cough, or I have diabetes, but I don't have high sugar. It's like addiction can't happen without denial and lying to yourself. So, yes, there's an element of like, of course, you have no idea how much you're impacting everybody because you don't even know what the fuck's going on. Or you're lying to yourself about how much you're using or how much you're drinking. So, yeah, obviously. So, one day I was driving to work and I was like, God, how can I help these people understand the impact they've had on their children without being a total psycho? Because I'd want to shake them, I'd want to look at them in their eyes and go, Billy Bob, you're fucking up. You're hurting your kids. Your kid doesn't want you at the football game because you act like an ass. All right. Your daughter's using drugs because she's acting out all the trauma drama and she doesn't have anywhere to turn. So she's like escaping, and you're blaming I've had other people say, oh, I use because my kids are crazy. If I don't drink, I'll go crazy. I got to drink because my kids are fucked up. I mean, they blame their kids for their use. I mean, it's just like psychotic. And, the rage inside me would boil and I just want to take them and shake them. But instead, I was like, God, is there a better way? I don't want to be, angry all the time and full of rage because addicts and alcoholics don't understand what they're doing to their kids. And I want them to stop. And God said, why, yes. Why, yes, Rain, Heidi, I have a great idea for you. Here's what I want you to do. God said to me, I want you to write a children's book for adults. And I was like, what? A children's book for adults? Yes, because most people will not understand or be willing to talk about such a complex idea if it's too complex or too scary or too big, thick book, big impact, big, thick book. How about you write a little tiny book? and it's written like from a child's perspective. And what if you put pictures in the book? And what if you write one little phrase at a time? And what if you take it nice and slow and you write it like a poem so they don't even realize, and then they like take it in little by little. And so I said, God, that's a great idea. Let's write this poem. So the first step was I sat down and in 15 minutes, I wrote the book. And God wrote the book through me and wrote the book. And then I was like, well, I'd like to have pictures. And then I had somebody that worked for me. Her name was Hope. And she said, my daughter, Teresa, was an excellent artist. I said, do you think that she would illustrate this little book for me? I mean, I had this idea with this book. Do you think she said, wow, this is such a great idea. Hope said, I think everybody needs to have this book. Teresa saw it, said, I love these guys also have a heart for God and for helping people. And they were like, I'll do it too. And then I said, I really like the style of Van Gogh. And she said, oh, me too. And she said, so she made these beautiful, can't really see to, you have to get the book to really see. By the way, this book, I'll link it below, is on Amazon, or in my description under my video you can go the book, buy the book from Amazon. And if you do, will you leave a review? This is a little book that I really want to change the world. I really believe that it will change the world, but it's got to get in some hands before it actually starts to do the work that we want it to do in the world. Okay. You can also support us by, if you want to donate books, let me know. Send me an email and say, Heidi, I'd like to buy 50 books. I'd like to buy 100 books. Will you take them to the, and if you do that and you work with me and say you want to buy some books in your name, I'll donate those books to treatment centers. I'll donate those books to foster care. I'll donate those books to therapist office. And so if you want to do that, get with me and I'll tell you how you can help support our cause. So I wrote the book and then I started using it inside of the treatment center and we'd read it. And as we formed a circle and went around and read the book, something very interesting happened. Two things happened. Number one, there was a lot of conviction in the room. There were a lot of people that were addicted that were saying, holy shit, I didn't realize the impact, but it was a way for them to make it palatable so they could take it in, they could let it marinate and simmer, and then know what to do with it next. It also was they were excited because it gave them a tool to be able to talk to their kids and share with them. But the second thing that happened is so many of the addicts and alcoholics that read this book said, oh my God, this is my life too. And I looked at them and I said, you know what? I know, because this isn't a new thing. This is generational trauma in a book. This is my grandma, my grandpa, my niece, this is goes on and on and on until one of us is willing to break the cycle for good. Maybe that's you. Maybe you say, I want to take a stand with you with this. Um, we're going to read it now. We're going to read the book together. And we're going to talk about how to use this as a dialogue with their kids. Okay. So, really, what's appropriate to read this with a kid? I've read it with kids inside of our courses and programs and worked with parents as young as 7 years old. 7 years old, they start to track and understand. 9 years old, they're really tracking, get it all, can talk to you back about it, can relate to it. Anything from, really, 7 to 9, you're going to get a little bit, but 9 on, if you open the doorway, it'll be a portal to deep conversations. And you could come with your children and you could read one page a week and just reflect on one page a week with your clients or your children or yourself or whoever is using this tool. And this could be a whole entire, I mean, this really meant for people to walk people through. You could take this book and build a whole coaching curriculum around just this book with your clients. You could have a family come in and do a page a week with them and use this in your coaching practices, your therapeutic practices, your healing modalities. Okay. And that's why I wrote it. The first page says, what's wrong with me? And again, the title of the book, The Lasting Impact on Children Who Grow Up in Addiction, Abuse, or Dysfunction by Heidi Rain, and illustrated by the beautiful and wonderful Teresa Eden. I'm different from my friends, but no one will ever know. My mom's different too, but we both put on a show. This is a perfect example of how when you're growing up in an addicted environment, the first tenet for you is act like nothing's going on, pretend nothing is wrong. And when this pattern of pretending like nothing is wrong and putting on a show gets started in childhood, you can imagine that this pattern, yes, this was the impact. Hey, one of the impacts of having an addicted parent is I turn into a chameleon. I turn into a pretender. I act like everything's okay when it's not. I don't know how to say to you, I'm hurting, this isn't okay, because my whole goal or my whole job inside of a dysfunctional family is to keep secrets. It's to pretend like everything is fine. It's to put my big girl pants on. So when you're having a conversation with your kid or your client or your coaching client or your whoever you're working with, you can say to them, "Do you ever feel like you are pretending that you're okay when you're not? Let's just talk about this week. How many times have you pretended to be okay when you're not okay?" Well, this is a residual shrapnel impact of growing up in this environment and then ministering to that. What if you didn't have to be? What if it was okay to have problems? What if in this house we were allowed to talk about our problems? What if we as a family take a stand that from now on, we're not going to pretend we're fine anymore. We're going to do an integrity cleanse and we're going to be willing, step one, we're going to talk about it when we're not okay. We are no longer expected to put on a show and be a performer. This would take you one whole week or one whole month just to work through. Just to say, wow, the impact of having an addict or growing up in abuse and dysfunction is pretending. Wow, who knew? Sometimes this is a picture, one of my favorites. This is a picture of a wolf feeding flowers, a girl feeding flowers to the wolf, trying to calm it. Sometimes my mom hurts me and I can't figure it out. I try and keep her happy so she won't run, scream, or shout. So, what is this pattern? If you would look at this, you'd say, oh my goodness, this is a pattern of a people pleaser. If I grow up in addiction and I grow up with an unstable parent who acts like a Jekyll and Hyde, I learned that I need to walk on eggshells and I need to figure out what's going to set her off. So I need to be 5 steps ahead. I need to play as a 10-year-old chess while everybody else is kind of playing checkers or not playing anything at all. So we learn how to very early on strategize how to keep people happy because we learn we are responsible for their feelings, that we're responsible for how they react, yell, jump. Of course, we're not, but can you see the codependency trap? And this is really a codependency book, a book on understanding codependency, which is a complex thing and understanding it in a very simple way. And I really want to just again thank God because you think about such a complex idea and how do you even open the door portal, right? This is it. And I God, praise God for like giving the idea, right? And for me, good job being obedient and writing the damn thing, right? Can you imagine just if you sat with your client or your child or yourself and asked, wow, who in my life am I trying to manage their emotions? How do I do that? How am I doing that? What would happen if I came to the understanding that it's not my job? How would my life be different if I stopped trying to feed the beast that's a wolf can't even eat flowers. You see, you're just like a lame guess. It's like, I don't know, do you want this? I mean, nothing works because you can't help a parent like that, right? Because why? Because we're not responsible in the first place, right? So this turns into a pleaser mentality, running around trying to see how I can keep you happy, and if I keep you happy, you'll stop hurting me. This is a little picture of the little girl sitting here outside of her parents' door waiting, and there's like pizza that this girl has cooked, by the way. And is like we think that's her pizza. That's actually the pizza she's feeding her mother. This is a little girl that's waiting for her mom to come out and eat, and she's having to take care of her, right? So it says sometimes she locks herself in the room and stays there way too long. So I wait and make sure she's okay and nothing's going wrong. How many times have we been trained as a kid or growing up in this environment to just be on vigilant, hyper vigilant, be on guard, stay at the ready? I can't go on with my life because I need to sit and make sure that you're going to be okay. So everything that I need is on hold because there's no safety in this house. I need to make sure, and I can't tell you how many times Children have been tragically terrified that their parents are going to die or overdose or have seen things like this happen in their lives, and they've seen people doing CPR on their face. This is real. And to think that this level of anxiety that's brought up in a kid because they don't know if their parents going to open the door and return from their cave that they've been in doing whatever, and they're waiting for their parent to emerge. You know how many children check to see their parents are breathing? So I want you to imagine, like, we can all go, yeah, that's so sad. She checked to see if her dad was died or not. And every time her dad went to sleep, she thought he was going to die. And we can be like, but just take a beat with that. Just take a fucking minute. Take a minute with that. Take a minute with that. Can you imagine what that sets up in a kid for later on in their life? The level of hypervigilance, the level of life or death for scenarios, the level of fear. And so just ministering to that, to wow, not to smooth it over. Well, thank God, we'd be tempted. Well, thank God they always made it out, huh? Thank God nobody died. Or thank God, everybody was okay. I mean, shit, that's toxic positivity thing we do. Instead of saying, tell me what that was like sitting there waiting behind that door, my love. Tell me what that burden was like. Wow, that feels heavy. Wow, the weight of the world. What if it wasn't your responsibility, but it felt like it was, right? Felt like it was your responsibility, right? So that's very real. Okay, and maybe then it was your responsibility because you were the only one there. You were the only one that saw your parents like that. My goodness, what an incredible amount of responsibility for you. And thank God you were there. Thank God. I'm not sure it I'm not sure it did anything for the outcome, but just that you were there, my God, right? Making sure what a loving person you are. Wow. But let's pretend for a minute that that wasn't okay that that happened. Would that be all right if we just think about that for a minute and think about, wow, what would that be like if you imagine that you had a little 5-year-old girl and you were doing something nefarious? Would it be her job to sit out there and wait for you and make sure you're okay? Wow. What do you think what do you wish would have happened instead if that were your little girl? How do you think that could have gone differently? Right? What would you do if that was your daughter outside of the door? What would you tell her? You start to play around with some ways for her to think about it differently. Wow, maybe I didn't need to sit by that door. Yeah, maybe it was fucked up that I sat outside that door. Wow, maybe I shouldn't have had to. And then she starts to get mad about it. Yeah, I'm mad at my parent. Then we don't want to do that. Oh, I don't want to blame him, but he couldn't help it. He didn't know what he was doing. And this is where you can intervene and say, it's okay to be mad. It's righteous anger. Righteous anger is a real thing. You're allowed to be upset about that because you know what? That fucking wasn't all right. That wasn't okay. You've got to be willing to let your children get mad. Rage is an appropriate response to a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old sitting behind a door waiting for a parent to make sure that they're okay and didn't die. Rage is a proper response. But do you see how we bury it and we get so attached to not wanting to hurt our parents or not wanting to blame them that we don't experience the proper feelings. So what happens? The rage gets buried. And then the next time you as an adult are sitting outside of a place waiting for somebody because they've hijacked you and you're in these relationships with people that make you drive them around to places and fucking wait in your car for them and you're seething, but you're like, well, I got to make sure they're okay. Or you're watching people and you're sitting there and you're even, your kids are telling you you can leave. You don't have to be here the whole time, but you feel like you still have to be hyper vigilant all the time and you can't ever let your guard down. You're walking around like a live wire waiting for the bad shit to happen all the time. These are the things we need to heal. This is the freaking shrapnel. My mom forgets I'm here sometimes and doesn't make me food. I'll just make it myself because I don't want to affect her mood. So this is where we learn as a kid not to ask for anything. I don't want to have my needs met. It's basic needs to get like food made for you. As a kid, it's basic needs to have your parents pack your lunch or get you bread, and sometimes as an adult, you're like, oh God, he's such a good guy. He showed up. Oh God, I have such a great partner right now. They eat dinner with me. I don't know. I have I'm joking, but I'm not because when you grow up so neglected, and this is a neglect wound where your needs aren't met, you learn not to ask for anything. You learn as an adult, you know what? I don't want to bother anybody. And if I ask for something, I'm going to piss them off or I'm going to make them upset. So you know what? I just better not ask for anything because I don't want to upset anybody. And then you go into your life with this mentality. Why? And you say, well, it's just the way I am. I don't like to bother anybody. I like to do everything by myself. And this turns into a martyr, by the way, because you know damn well, and so do I, that you want people to help you. You want to be helped. You want people to see your needs. You want somebody to make you a nice meal. You know, you want these things, and it's not wrong to want it, but you've been trained to believe that it is because then you're like, there's something wrong with you and you're asking for too much or you're weak or needy for having needs at all. So it's okay. Don't bother. I'll just do it myself. And then you're passive aggressive, waiting, wishing somebody would see all you're doing all the time and how you have to do everything all by yourself all the time. Meanwhile, you just want somebody to see, that you need the help, but you're not asking for it because you don't want to be a problem. So how do you therapize this? How do you coach this? You say to somebody, let's talk about how this is showing up today. Tell me last week when you could have asked for something you needed and you didn't, what happened? You therapize it. Tell me how this is still showing up in your life today. Tell me about what comes up in you when you ask somebody for something. Tell me how you avoid sharing your needs. Tell me the last time you were passive aggressive. Tell me what would happen if you decided today your needs were okay. How would you operate differently? Questions are the way out. Questions are the way out. You read the thing and then you ask the questions. Questions are always the way out. Always. But if you want to have a better life, you have to learn to ask really fucking good questions. One of the reasons I'm so successful with my clients and my students is because I know the questions to ask them to get them to think totally differently than they've ever thought before. And I'm not special. I'm just really practiced at asking questions. I've been born asking questions. My question used to be, what's wrong with me? Now it's what's right with me. Now my question is, how can I have even more love in my life? My question used to be, how bad does this have to get? Jesus. My question used to be, how much more of this can I handle? That's a bad question. You're going to ask yourself that question. You're going to get more and more you need to handle. A better question is, how good can I let it get? Good can I let it get? Oh, good can I let it get? How much more love can I allow in today? Ooh, those are the questions. Sometimes I feel very sad. I wish she loved me more. I cry all alone so no one will see, locked behind my door. Now, of course, this is a story here of how we talk ourselves out of um, needing love. It's been so you look at your parents that are toxic, they're addicted, they're dysfunctional, and you want you want their love. But at some point you just go, I guess it's pointless. I guess that love is not for me. And you decide if my parents can't even love me, if this toxic person can't even love me, and then the mind of a child goes, I can't even get my parents to pick me. They choose alcohol over me. Imagine having that be your thought and then growing up into adult relationships. Well, my parents couldn't even love me the way my parents weren't even able to choose me. So how am I able to choose me? How am I able to choose me? How am I able to think that somebody else is going to choose me? Now, the lie that needs to be rectified isn't this toxic positivity of like, well, they did love you. They did. They loved you. They might have loved you, but it's also reckoning that they didn't know what the fuck they were doing to show you. And they also had a lot of self-hatred attached to that love that they had. So their definition, they loved you to the best of their ability, but their ability was fucked. So then you don't go into relationships thinking you're not lovable. You go into thinking, is this person love able? You stop wondering if you're lovable and you look at people and wonder, are they love able? You don't take it personally anymore. And that's gold. If you just did that with your clients or with yourself or with your children, just said, instead of thinking if you're lovable, let's look at people as if they're love able. Are they able of giving love? It's not a personal thing. Your lovability has nothing to do with somebody's love ableness. And your parent did not have love ableness. So you didn't feel the love. And that makes sense, right? Because the person that's not love able is not going to be able to make you feel lovable. Right. So you're only going to make a stand. And what if you only made a stand from this point in your life that you were only going to let in people in your life that were love able? And that was your filter from now on. what would happen? What if it were true that you were lovable all along? What would your life have been different? How would you be thinking differently today? Right? These are the questions you ask your clients or your children. I know, I hear you. You're thinking to yourself, this is so much and this is a lot. And this is why it's one bite at a time. This is why this is a very small book that's designed to take years to get through. It's like the Tao Te Ching. I don't know if you've ever read the Tao Te Ching. It's one of my favorite texts. And it's like 83 or 84 chapters. It's very tiny. You can read it in 3 hours in an afternoon, but it'll take you a lifetime to process it and to understand it. And that's the same here. It's not that I want you to take a lifetime to get over your trauma or a lifetime to heal. It's that there's levels of healing, levels of enlightenment. I can still read this book myself and ask myself, where did I pretend last week? I can read this book and ask myself, where am I confusing lovability with loveableness? I can ask myself these things because I have the guide. I have the tool to know, oh, this isn't me. This is the impact of my life being acted out in my behavior. Sometimes I get really mad and I want to yell or scream, but I never want to make her upset. I never want to upset her. I never want to be mean. This is a picture of a little girl with a dragon with an angel and a devil on her shoulder. And I think most of us that grow up with dysfunction who have to bite our tongue, who, I saw this meme the other day that a huff was talking back in the 70s, like a sigh was a talk back, right? Back in the day. And we weren't really allowed, if you're Gen X or, anywhere near in there, or, a lot of us had that mentality of like, don't talk back. Expressing your anger at your parents wasn't a real thing, being able to, especially if you had abusive parents, because you're going to get the shit knocked out of you. I remember a couple times when I would try to broach or approach the subject and it's like, well, who the hell do you think you are? You're going to tell me, or if you have a vulnerable narcissist as a parent and you start to tell them that they're hurting you, they'll say something like, well, when you tell me how I'm hurting you, you're devastating me. They'll turn your pain, they'll twist your pain and go. So a good thing with your clients or your children here when you're, or yourself, is to ask yourself, where do I repress my rage? Repressed rage is the hallmark of an abused kid. And how do you know if you have repressed rage? Well, I'll tell you where you find it: traffic, uh, lines, waiting in line. If you have a repressed rage, it'll come up when you're not in control of things, where it's an unexpected delay. You're stuck in traffic. Somebody cuts you off. Somebody does something unexpected. So a lot of us that grow up in this environment are hyper vigilant. And as long as we can be in control of everything, we feel fine. We feel okay. Right? But the minute we're out of control or something unexpected happens or somebody hijacks us, the fear sets in. And instead of being afraid, we're not allowed to feel afraid as kids growing up in this environment because we have to be big and strong instead. So anger is the next go-to thing. However, we're not allowed to feel our anger because that's inappropriate. And you're going to get smacked down if you're angry. So you have to repress that too. And then you just learn to kind of suck it up and feel numb and feel nothing until something sets you off and you're like a ticking time bomb. Also, people with repressed rage will let it out when they're drunk. The only time they give themselves permission to be really pissed off and let out that rage is when they're under the influence. And then you have a Jekyll and Hyde situation. Right. So how do you heal this? Well, you start to ask somebody, what if you were allowed to be angry? What if that called for righteous rage? What if your situation called for anger? I used to, whenever I did family systems work, when I was working at the treatment center, I would have a group of people and we would do this, pretend, put somebody else in the position of a parent, somebody else is the kid, be able to talk to the parent and rage out, right? Essentially tell somebody everything you want to tell them. And I used to have a body bag that I would wear from my neck to my knees, and the people would punch the shit out of it, rage rooms, things like that, as an ability to, yes, you can get in touch with your anger, but also it's just really therapeutic to be in a place where the rage is like fine and okay. And you let it come out more and more and more and more and more until you don't feel like you have anything left. And what would happen was when these people would punch the things, or I'd be holding the body bag and they'd be wailing on it, is eventually they'd hit and hit and hit until they were reduced emotionally to the real rawness of it, which was just grief. And then the tears would come and then I'd hold them. And we just sit there and I just rock them like a baby, just rock them like a baby. And that was some of the most magical times that I've ever had with a human being, to be able to watch them and witness them release. It makes my hair stand up now just thinking about it. But just being able to be that safe place for somebody, to hold the space for somebody long enough for it to be transformed, or alchemized into something else. And that's what we want. We want to take that, be able to become the great alchemist in our lives, taking the pain and transforming it into something much more um, helpful for us, you know? So sometimes I get confused. I wonder what I did wrong. Maybe if I can be better, we can just get along. This is a setup for the perfectionist. It's like when you have a dysfunctional person in your life, all you're doing all the time is going over the checklist of good girl, bad girl. You know what I mean? Let me see. Like, because also, especially if you have a dysfunctional parent that makes you think that their behavior is your fault. So many parents do that. Well, I wouldn't need to drink if you weren't such an asshole. You know, I wouldn't need to act this way if you hadn't done this or that. And it's unfortunate, because justification for the abuse becomes the abused. I mean, that's really sick, right? That's disgusting, but that's how it works. So this is about feeling how, exploring with your client or with your child or with yourself, where do I feel wrong all the time? You know, do I just walk around with a feeling like I'm wrong? For so many years, I've always considered myself, uh, a divinator, for lack of a better word. Just being able to like know things, being an open channel for God, God telling me things therapeutically from a very early age. Like I would just know therapeutic interventions, kind of like a savant would come down to play the piano and they just know the notes. Therapeutically or psychologically, I kind of like, I'm a genius this way. I just kind of know interventions, what to say, what people need, different ways. In meditations, the archetypes have come to me, just so many different things. And for a long time, I did not trust that at all. I thought I was full of shit. I didn't know what was doing. So I would need confirmation. I would go get knighted, get the certification, make sure, Google things. Did somebody else say this? Who else knows this? Is this right? Is this right? Is this right? Do I know what I know? Do I see what I see? Do I feel what I feel? It's taken me a whole lifetime, till I'm 51 years old, to finally get to this point where I'm like, yeah, I know what I know and I see what I see and I can do what I can do in the world. And I'm not wrong. So looking at yourself or your clients or your patients or your students or yourself or your children, and saying, where am I in conflict? Where are things that I do know what I know? I know what I know. I see what I see. I feel what I feel. Where am I feeling wrong just because that's a pattern of feeling wrong and being blamed for things that weren't my fault? Sometimes I get embarrassed when people ask, well, hey, what's going on? Then I pretend I'm fine, or I lie, even though I know it's a con. And this is again, where people come into your life, and you might have a lot of friendships where you talk about them and their problems. Or if you grow up in this environment, you turn out to be friends with people where you don't reveal much about yourself. You kind of keep all the stuff that's going on with you right close to the vest. And you'll be a great helper for everybody else. You want to hear about their lives or their problems. But when it comes to sharing yourself, there's a big bottleneck there for you. And what's it attached to? Well, this is what you ask your clients. I noticed that sharing is a challenge, vulnerability. Um, what used to happen when you would even attempt to think about sharing, or in your house? How was your how what were the windows or the doorways of opportunity for you to be able to share? And what would happen if you attempted to share what was really going on with you? Do you have some instances in your life where you did share and it backfired? People need to talk about these things. Yeah, one time I did. I told so and so everything, and then it was all around the school. Or yeah, I told my parents I was really hurting, and then one parent used it against the other parent, and they filed for divorce and said it was my fault. Or yeah, one time. There's always something attached to that fear, and we can go back to the root and say, where did this come from? Where did this originate? Where did this story stem from for you? And then you're able to work it through and say, well, keeping something close to the vest, right, is a survival strategy. And good on you. You had to do that. That was a smart choice. Is it still the smartest choice for you? And then you start to explore how withholding, because this is a setup for a withholder pattern, I share, and then I feel like I have a vulnerability hangover. A withholder, I'll start to share something with you. And then the minute I feel like it's out there, I get nervous as fuck. I think you're going to use it against me, or you're going to hurt me with it. Or I feel like I'm naked out in the world. So I want to create a distancing technique, and I'll get mad at you, or I'll blow you off or ghost you because now I feel too close or exposed. These are patterns that develop as this early childhood dynamic that if we don't call forth and recognize, you're going to be in your intimate relationships. You're never going to feel known. Never going to feel like anybody really knows you until you rectify this. So slowly, with a trusted person, myself, a coach, a therapist, a teacher, a healer, whatever, you sit down and you say, how can I learn to share more of who I am? How can I learn to open up and share what's really going on with me so that I can feel closer to people, right? I'm not going to alienate people anymore by trying to be perfect or acting like I'm okay all the time. I want to be more authentic. I want to share. I want to be able to tell people what's up. Now, again, don't cast your pearls before swine. You got to know where you're sharing, right? Sometimes I get super scared when I can't predict what's next. So I try to stay in control of things so nothing's too complex. This already, I can feel the energy of the controller coming up with like, this is a person this little girl's got the broom and the mop and the trash can and a to-do list, and this is somebody that just walks around looking for problems, wanting to stay in control of things all the time and fix everything around them. There's also another example of this too here with the fixing, but this is like more of a controlling personality where I don't just want to know, what's going to happen next in my world by my schedule. I'll live and die by my schedule. That this is a person who's really rigid. There's no flexibility in their life. They're not able to take on, that has to be, it's so buttoned up. It's like, can you feel the constriction? I can feel the constriction as I'm saying this. My world needs to be so small and so tight that nothing unpredictable can come into it. Now, by the way, this is a person who will also then extend that attitude to the people around them. I need to also control what you think, what you feel, how you are acting so that nothing gets crazy. This is a recipe for disaster. If we don't minister to this part of us that feels like we need to be in control all the time and learn how to surrender, which is the opposite of control. We learn how to surrender. We learn how to let people be more who they are. We give more room for some flexibility and some wonder in our lives and magic in our lives, which sounds scary to a controlling person. Fuck that. Magic. They start to think like, dark magic, bad things are going to happen, right? Not the magical mysteries of good things. So it's learning how to let go of control. Learning why you had to do it. Well, tell me when you were little. What did it look like to have to be in control? Tell me about the pressure. Tell me how that felt. Tell me what that was like for you. And how is it hurting you now having to be in control all the time? How do you feel having to juggle all those balls? What would happen if you let it go? Can we practice? Where's one area in your life this week you can practice release and surrender, right? You see how you can coach around this and start to really help people. Sometimes I become determined to turn it all around. I try and fix things around me even before they break down. Now, this also, you see this cat here is about, what that cat's going to do. That cat's going to swipe that water off of that in this picture. So here she put a pillow down so she can catch it. This is a person who, as a kid in an addicted family, would spot the problems a mile away and would do everything they could to fix it and make it right and make it okay and lessen the impact of the problem. And you might be doing this as an adult. If you don't fix this can turn into very quickly an enabler situation where you're fixing everybody else's problems for them all the time. Even being a good coach or a good therapist, we all know that we're not here to fix anybody. As a healer, as a shaman, as a coach, as a spiritual teacher, as a parent, your job really isn't to fix anything. It's to hold space for somebody or for yourself long enough to let the right force arise naturally, not have to intervene or interject. Well, this is what you should do, or this is how this should work, or this is how you're going to fix this, or this is how you're going to fix that. You really kind of, I want you to picture if you had a child without arms. This is a terrible thing, right? But if you have a child without arms, you're not just going to fix it by feeding them all the time. Because what happens if you do? What happens if you learn, well, shit's going to break down, so I need to fix it, or I'm the only one that can fix it. And you extend that to household things, right? Like this little girl with this, but then you take it mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and you have this child without arms and you're going to fix it. You're going to feed them. Instead of having the patience and the love to sit back long enough to let that child figure it out for themselves. It's excruciating. You didn't learn that skill, or you don't learn that skill when you grow up in a family of addiction, because by then it's too late. If you don't rush to fix things, you think people will die. And that level of urgency is real for you. It's absolutely real. But in life, in a healthy situation, most people can afford the luxury of time to be able to figure things out for themselves. It's not so life or death. And by the way, even when you are dealing with an addict or an alcoholic, you can give resources. And I teach how to rectify the fixer all the time. You know, the fixer is one of our archetype personalities that comes out of this upbringing. How do you heal the fixer? Is you first have to learn what's yours and what's not yours. What's yours to take part in, what's not. You also have to learn as a fixer, like you'll start to grow up with this mentality and you'll attract caseloads instead of friendships. You know, you'll be the one, the rock, you'll be the problem solver in your relationships and they'll be unbalanced. So you've got to learn as a fixer how to take release and say, well, this is me, this is mine, this is yours. And also only work and help people who are asking you or paying you. Okay. Or that are grateful and receptive to the information that you're teaching. Like this, for example, I put out these videos to help. I don't pay attention. I'm not after converting people that need to know this and will never know. And I'm not chasing after the people that are like, oh, I don't want to know. I'm chasing after the people or meeting the people. What you seek is seeking you. I'm seeking you because you're seeking me. You're seeking this information. You're coming to me and saying, hey, can you teach me about this? Can you pour into me? Can you minister to me about this problem? Can you share with me? And here I am. And this is a relationship that's mutually beneficial, because even though, you know, directly, let's say mutually beneficial, well, yeah, mutually beneficial if you buy the book or support the book or join my program, is conditional support, right? No, mutually beneficial because I'm being obedient. I'm pouring out into the world what I'm called to do. And you're being obedient and learning in the information. And we're in this interdependent life, you know, but I'm not attached to an outcome with you. I don't need you to do anything specific. I'm not attached to an outcome. I don't even know if you push pause and come back or whatever. I'm letting it go. I'm putting it out there and then letting it go. And I'm trusting that you are going to do what you need to do with this and your divine timing, right? But I'm not in control of it. I can't make it happen. I can put it out there and release it. And that's what we all do. Like even as a fixer, right? You can put out wisdom, you can share thoughts, you can shaman your life, you can go around you, but really it's only going to ever land on the ears to hear or the eyes to see or the seekers, the ones that are seeking you. And many times you're in relationships with people that are not seeking you because they want to become better. They're seeking you because they want you to fix everything for them, because that's who you've become. But what happens if you stop fixing things for everybody? You get to see, well, what is my value if I'm not helping you? What is my value if I'm just here in this dynamic and just existing as a person? Then you start to work on your worthiness. Right? So you can see there's a lot to do. Sometimes I get hopeless and I think it's a lost cause. That's when I want to disappear and wish I never was. This is a little girl here daydreaming. You know, the stork is dropping her off at a home here. And then the stork is here with the wrong way sign. You know what this is? This is the orphan spirit. This is feeling like you've been born into a family and you got the wrong freaking address, man. Nobody's getting you. And this is an orphan spirit is one of the hardest because we don't have a home. We feel like, you know what was the point of me being born? What was the point of me being here? Nobody sees me. Nobody gets me. Nobody understands me. And now, by the way, this can be a victim mentality. An orphan spirit is a victim mentality. I'm unwanted. I'm unlovable. Again, instead of lovable people, we got the memo. We were unlovable. And then we get to this point of just like, I just wish, what's the point of me even being here? And this is a scary place and it's a real place. And being able to sit down with somebody and have a conversation and say, this is the lost kid. This is the kid that goes up in their room with the addictions happening and they play video games for 14 hours a day. They just want to disappear. They don't want to live in a world that's real. You'll see a lot of kids that construct other worlds, play video games, and as a response to trauma, because this world sucks. So let me go on Second Life. I mean, that used to be a thing back in the day. You know, let me go create MySpace. Oh my God. I don't know if you guys, we were the original social media people. These Gen Z. MySpace was the original social media site. Ask your parents about it, or you and I reminisce. Cheers. Okay. So this is a crucial conversation to have with somebody. And how do we minister to an orphan spirit? Is you spend a long time sourcing where you come from, truly, and where you belong. And this ultimately is a spiritual conversation. That's why we say that the cure for addiction, and just like Carl Jung had said many years ago, and Bill, who founded AA, was on an ayahuasca trip and realized the only way to actually recover from anything is to have a spiritual breakthrough. So he created the 12-step program as a way to have a spiritual breakthrough, but it became something totally different. It became like a program we're attached to and addicted to. We have to work every day of our lives. I mean, it's not about a breakthrough at all. It's about more addiction. But spiritual awakening, you'll feel home no matter where you are forever for the rest of your life, because you know you are home. You are home. But that is a process of therapeutic intervention, coaching, to come to a place where you recognize that you're home, and wherever you go, you bring the home, because home is within. Sometimes I feel invisible, like, hey, I'm over here. I try hard to be successful and get myself in gear. And this is just really speaking to the achiever. This is just speaking to the achiever. So I'll tell you what, I'm about halfway through this book. And as you can imagine, I don't want to be here all day long with you, but I'm going to go quicker through the rest of these. And then we're going to get to the end. And because I want you to hear the end of this book, because there's so much hope. So let's speed it up a little bit. Sometimes I feel worthless, so I try and be all I can be, because if I can just be better, maybe she'll stop hurting me. Jesus. I mean, this is like A+ report cards on the fridge. She's got all the medals. Can you relate to this? I know I could. One of the reasons I felt worthless as a kid. So I was like, you know what? Let me just be an achiever and show and prove everybody. This is like proving energy. We call this trauma drive, where I'm going to become all I can be and you just watch me. And here's the attitude. Yeah, you don't think I can? Watch me. Anybody who says that, you don't think I can? Freaking watch, is a trauma survivor. People who don't have a lot of trauma in their lives really don't have anything to prove. They certainly don't have to prove their value. They do things led by the heart. And this is where healing is. I want to do things because I'm led by my heart, or led by my passions, or led by my joy, not because I'm led by proving myself. Fuck that. So when you get into this place of healing later on, and you could talk to your kids or your clients and say, hey, tell me about when you fail something. How do you feel? Tell me about needing to be the best all the time. Talk to your football star, talk to your head cheerleader, talk to your straight A student, talk to your student council president, talk to your nursing student, talk to your law student, talk to your medical student, and ask them how they feel when they fail. Ask them how they feel. And this is a setup for a high achieving, binge drinking, eating disordered person down the road, because all my value is in my worth, but it's never enough. I'm never enough. It's never enough. I'm not enough. You're not enough. There's not enough. And so what do? I try to fill up on substances, and that's never enough. Never enough wine, never enough Oreos. Let me go make some more money. Never enough money. Never enough titles, never enough ladder climbing. Fuck. I'm tired just talking about it. How about you? What would happen if you had nothing to prove? Around here at Heidi Rain, our coaching and consulting, I invented Rain Recovery, REIGN Recovery. It's a step-by-step process to heal all these things. But one of the things that we lead by, one of our mantras, is NTP, baby. Nothing to prove. NTP. What would I do if I had NTP? What would I do if I had nothing to prove? And this is a great conversation for you. Sometimes I feel guilty and I wish I had another mom. I daydream of having a real family, sometimes all day long. You know what's really sad is that if this isn't rectified as a kid, you'll engage in limerence as an adult. You will fantasize all the time. You'll be in a marriage with somebody and you'll be thinking about the one that got away. You'll be in a marriage sometime and you'll always be thinking, like, I wonder if there's more for me, better for me, something else out there for me. Also, feeling guilty because as a kid, this guilt thing is real because you don't want the parents that you have, but you're supposed to love and want the parents that you have. So you're in a conundrum. You're in a catch-22 there because you don't want your parents, but now you're a bad person if you don't want your parents. You're a bad kid if you don't love your parents. Do you want you to tell your kids it's okay if you wish you had another dad? It's okay if you wish you had another mom. That's normal. That's healthy, actually, because if I had a bad sandwich full of turds, then I'm eating a shit sandwich. I wish it was sirloin. I'd wish it was something else. Would that be a normal response? If I was chewing sand, would I wish that it was not sand? If I had, I mean, it's normal to want something that you're not supposed to have. And you're not supposed to have a parent that hurts you. You're not supposed to have a parent that's drunk. You're not supposed to have a parent that's right. That's not what's supposed to happen. That's not how we're designed, right? We're designed to be loved and protected and cared for, but not everybody gets the freaking memo. And so they have kids because there's no safeguards in place, and anybody can do that. It's harder to adopt a dog than it is to procreate. When you tell I'm getting hot about that, you have to do more to adopt a cat than to have a kid. Well, mind boggling. So it's a normal response when you got a shitty end of the stick to want something else. But as an adult, if you don't rectify that and make peace with it, you'll get into relationships where you recreate that same scenario over and over again. You'll be in one thing and wish you had something else. And you'll wonder why you're doing that. I never thought I'd be in this situation. I thought I'd have the happily ever after. That's what this girl is dreaming about, the Prince Charming, right? And the relationship. And what you'll do is you'll get into a scenario like the one you grew up in as an adult if you don't heal this, and you'll recreate over and over again, wishing and fantasizing you had a different husband. Well, life would be so much better if I had so and so. Isn't it cool to know that's not you? You're not sick. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you, but you're functioning totally in accordance with what happens when you grow up like this. I think that's liberating to know that. I think that's liberating to know. Sometimes I feel like settling, even though I know I want more. Maybe this is all there is, all I have in store. This really is what happens whenever you're in a relationship with an addict or alcoholic growing up, is that your expectations just go in the shitter. It's like you start out in life with like high expectations, like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. And then all of a sudden it just goes in the shitter. You go to the restaurant with your family, you're like, high expectations. This is the best Mexican restaurant in all of Texas. You get really excited. You go in, sit down, and then all of a sudden within 20 minutes your dad, who promised he wouldn't drink, goes to the bar, downs some tequila, comes back, and now he's wearing a sombrero, he's dancing on the bar, he's clapping for the waiter, and everybody's mortified. Lower your expectations. Next time we go to Mexican, maybe don't even go, right? You start to lower your expectations, and then you hook up with people as an adult who are like shit show because your expectations are so bad. And then you wonder, are my expectations too high? No, we have to figure out what normal expectations are. In fact, in our coaching and rain recovery and how we work, we don't even deal in expectations anymore. We manage our expectations. We set standards in recovery. We trade expectations for standards. Hey, if I'm going to go to a Mexican restaurant, here's the experience I'm going to have. And if you're going to come with me and that doesn't line up with the experience I'm going to have, then I'm not going to go with you. Whoa, mind boggling, right? But just the ability to learn as an adult to take control of your life and of the situations in it and set up your life so that you are reigning in your own life, REIGN, you're reigning in your own life. It's your fucking kingdom. And you're going to set the standards for how you're going to operate. And that's possible. I'm telling you it is because I live it every day. I live it every day and I help hundreds of clients live it every day themselves. And these are people that were in prison, psychological prisons, mental prisons, emotional prisons, constructs. This is all prison, right? And gave them the keys to break themselves free. I really do love her so much. And I wish she felt the same instead of playing with my feelings like some twisted game. A lot of us grew up with parents that loved us and hated us within the matter of 5 minutes, 5 seconds, 5 days, 5 years. You never knew what parents you're going to get. This is a Jekyll and Hyde child who had a Jekyll and Hyde parenting impacting the child. I didn't know, from 1 minute to the next, you're going to love me today, you're going to hate me today. How's it going to be? If you don't rectify this and teach your children that that's not normal, and it's certainly not their fault for somebody to have all these different spectrum of emotions towards them on a daily basis, they'll get into relationships with adults that make them guess how people feel about them all the time. This kid will grow up wondering, do you like me? Do you hate me? They'll invent things in their minds, even obsessing about how people feel about them all the time. Now, again, our culture has set this up. You don't even have to grow up in addiction to have this one right now because the trauma of social media and being liked and not liked. Fuck. I mean, now it's like, I love you today. I hate you tomorrow. I watch you 500 times. I watch 500 views today, 2 tomorrow. It's like this is a setup for everybody. So how do you heal this part? You learn that you holding the center of your lovability at all times and your worthiness at all times, and you learn how to master that and hold on to that and have that be an intrinsic thing that comes from within, that extrinsically, no matter what's going on in the world around you, somebody can take their love away, their approval away, their praise away, their time away, their opinions away. They could take everything away from you, and you remain rooted in your worth. It doesn't matter if one person likes it, no people like it, or a million people like it. Your reaction is the same because your worth comes from within. We have an acronym in our RAIN recovery system is within, WITHIN. I'll go over it in another video, but it's a system. It's not just like a nice idea. Well, yeah, I want to be able to have this self-esteem, this unshakable sense of self that doesn't come and go when people take their love away or play their stupid games with me. I want to be able to feel lovable all the time, no matter what. Well, there's a system to be able to do that. That's me. I'm always like, well, how do you do that? People say, oh, you just have to love yourself. Okay, well, how do you do that? Give me the step by step, man. Nobody's teaching this except for me. I'm teaching it. I mean, maybe a couple other people are teaching it too. Bless you. Thank you for teaching it. Okay, if she would just say she's sorry, I'm sure I'd be okay. But that's not happened yet. So I'll just get through today. This is a big thing that a lot of kids that grow up in addiction think is like the day my parents apologize for everything they put me through is the day that I'm going to be well and healthy and whole. And I remember for me, it was a day where somebody in my life, I waited my whole life and they apologized. I was like, 25 years old and got sat down on the bed and was like, hey, Rain, I'm sorry for every time I ever hurt you or made you feel bad about yourself or did this self-destructive crazy thing to you or whatever. And I was like, wow, this is the moment I've been waiting for my whole life. I'm going to get up and feel and be healed and enlightened, like ding, like the fairy touches you on the head and you're like, I'm healed. And the fairy dust flies on your head. No, it's a crock of shit. They say they're sorry. And I went up and doing my own self-destructive behavior years on end after that, still, I think I went out and got drunk that night, you know what I mean? Because I still didn't feel worthy. Even when people apologize to you, it's not going to be enough. There will come a day they're going to say sorry. And if you're lucky enough to believe them, because most of us, when people say they're sorry, we don't believe them, especially people that are still hurting us. And you shouldn't believe people when they tell you they're sorry, but they're still hurting you. That's not somebody who's sorry. That's somebody who just wants you to be able to take a little more. So they want to smooth it over. So till the next time. All right. Sorry, a real apology comes with a change. Apology that doesn't come with a change is a manipulation. But what happens when that sorry comes is the damage is still done. And that's why we want to say, well, they said they were sorry, so I should be over it. This is your client. This is your child. This is you who says, I should be over it. They're really sorry. They've made up for it. They got sober when I was like 10 and I've had them be sober my whole lives. I mean, they were a shitty parent for 5 years and a great parent for 20 years. I mean, I don't know why they said they were sorry. They are sorry. I really believe them. Well, okay. Why are you still hurting? Well, you're still hurting because it sucked and it hurt you. And even though they're sorry, I'm sorry is not enough to heal the damage caused by addiction. I'm sorry. An apology is never enough. And it's a cheap substitute for the internal work that we need to do to heal. What they did left a mark. I don't care if they're sorry or not. When somebody stands up in a court of law and says, I'm really sorry I killed your purse. I'm really sorry I killed somebody, but you forgive me. Well, they're still fucking dead. And the same is true for you. I'm sorry I hurt you, but you're still hurt. So they can be sorry and you still have a lot of healing to do. So you can say, thank you for that. Sorry, I'm dealing with the impact of this for the rest of my life. And that could be your truth. And you could say that. You could say that. I'm glad you're sorry. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. And I'm working on the impact for the rest of my life. Not to say that to them to punish them, but to give them a reality check. I don't know why we think an apology carries so much fairy dust with it, but it fucking doesn't. On that note, take a drink of my coffee, calm down. Okay. Okay, now we're getting towards the end of the book. Aren't you lucky? Because it's all going to come together. Here's little girls growing up now. The days went on, and I grew up to become tough. And although I became very successful, I still never felt enough. I'm going to let you just realize this is what happens. You try to overcome your trauma and you climb all the ladders and you make all the money and then you go, I'm dead and empty inside. That's what happened there. And even though I'm smart, I wonder why I'm so dumb. Sometimes I self-destruct and take things to make me numb. Now, this is the person that grew up with addiction and a shit show, but all of a sudden they have an affinity for Ativan themselves. They are binge drinking. They are shopping on Amazon and getting a million packages. They're binging and restricting on food. It's like you promised yourself, I would never do this, but here I am enacting the same behavior. So this is very common for people that grow up in addiction and dysfunction to either go so far on the other end that they pretend they're fine and they have no trauma at all, but they're like walking around and getting all their perfectionism on on everybody else, or somebody that just totally self-destructs, like the phoenix. They don't know why they can be so successful and then they burn it down. These self destructive patterns, by the way, are part of our course. A part of our RAIN recovery system is learning there are 8 flavors of self destructive behavior. Now, if you want to find out your flavor, I have 8 self destructive archetypes, SSA. Well, self sabotage archetypes, SSA. Self sabotaging archetypes, like the controller that we talked about, pretender, you're pretending everything's fine. The clinger, we didn't really talk about much the clinger. The withholder, we talked about a little bit. There are 8 self-sabotaging archetypes. You can find out which one yours is if you go to HeidiRain.com, RAIN. I invented a test for you to see which archetype you are. And that's the first step in your healing, is discovering, well, what self-sabotage flavor do I have? What self-sabotaging archetype do I have? Now, SSA spelled backwards is ass, right? So you know your your SSA, and you cover your ass, right? You learn how to stop trying to control everything, how to stop pretending you're fine, how to be more authentic in your life, how not to cling and let go of shit, let it go and not be scared to death when you do, right? You learn how to integrate a higher level of thinking and consciousness through the RAIN recovery system that teaches you how to take, for example, your controller. Actually, when she's healed, she becomes a queen. She's meant to be a benevolent ruler of her life, but she's stuck playing small in this small mind. I've got to control everything, instead of the big mind, the healed mind, which is, I'm a queen. I want to rule things, right? Instead of being a pretender and being a chameleon and taking all these different parts of you and being who you need to be here and who you need to be there, when that's not healed, that's unhealthy. That's a self-sabotaging archetype, right? But you take that pretending because nobody knows really who you are. And when you heal, when you integrate a new consciousness, a new level of health into your life, you become like an alchemist. You take all the things and make magic out of it. You take all the parts of yourself and you integrate them into an alchemy of your most authentic, powerful self, right? So this is all the things we do in our RAIN recovery system. We stop self-destructing. One day, many years later, my mom and I took a walk, and here's the girl all grown up with her mom. She grasped my hand gently and told me she wanted to talk. She told me something I wondered, but never really knew. She said, "It's not your fault, you know, all those things I did to you." I felt confused just then and really wanted to know, why did she hate me so much and treat me like her foe? It was then she tightened her grip and she started to cry. She said she finally understood what she did and she knew the real reason why. She began to tell me then how the real story went. She said she was sick and suffering, and that's all her behavior meant. She said the truth was and is, I loved you more than you could know, but because I hated myself, that's all I knew how to show. I asked her if she was better or did she hate herself still. She said she was learning to love herself each and every day with all of her will. I felt happy for her, but wondered for me, how will I learn to love myself so that I'm finally free? I decided the best thing that I could do, which was to rewrite my story into something more true. There is value in what was, but I will leave it in the past. I was always worthy of love, and I have the truth at last. The last couple pages of this book are an attempt. Now, not everybody gets the luxury of having their parent come back around and go, listen, I was really sick and suffering. And every time I hurt you, that was a reflection of my internal war with myself, getting shrapnel all over you. Not a lot of us are lucky. If you are an addict or alcoholic in recovery, please take the last few pages of this book and say them verbatim to your kid, your adult kid, your little kid, what have you. I'm not trying to put a bow on anything because I do believe that in reality, when we are healed, we do know and do love with all of our hearts, and we are able to take 100% responsibility and accountability for the pain we inflicted on another human being. But we also understand that I was in pain, so I inflicted pain, right? Um, Hurt people don't necessarily hurt people. Sick people hurt people. Okay. And when I'm sick and suffering, I'm going to be hurtful to you. And so I think it's a better way to avoid a toxic compassion, which is, oh, you're hurting, so you're hurting me. That's not really, I hurt a lot and I don't hurt people, right? You were hurt and you try not to hurt people, right? Lots of people that were hurt don't hurt people. In fact, we vow we're never going to hurt a person and we vow to help people instead. So we're going to stop saying hurt people, and we're going to say sick people hurt people. Mentally sick, emotionally sick, spiritually sick. And in order for them to stop hurting, they need to be healed. Healed people don't hurt people. Okay. So healing is a personal responsibility. So even though this person can say, yes, I knew I hurt you, they also cannot be the ones to fix you because you cannot go to the source of your pain to fix your pain. That's why at the end of the book, it says, well, I'm happy for you. I'm glad you're healing and learning to love yourself every day. But how will I start to learn to love myself every day so that I'm free from the prison that I've been a prisoner of now as a result of all this shit I experienced? How do I get the keys? Well, the keys are within. The keys are within. The keys to release yourself from the prison created by growing up in addiction are within. And the six keys are within: worthiness, W. When I rectify my worth, I'm able to be fully healed. When I rectify my identity, I know who I am and not who I've needed to be for you. I become my authentic, realist, most sacred self. When I learn to trust, I heal my trust issues, and I have trust issues with you, with others, with myself, with God. When I heal those trust issues, when I just do healing in general from all these different patterns, when I heal in general, when I learn how to integrate intuition and integrate my higher self into my life, and when I learn how to nourish myself with real things that fulfill me instead of stuff, people, places, and things. And that spells within. That acronym spells within. This whole system is within the framework of our RAIN recovery system. And what is it about? Well, RAIN recovery is a way to recover from toxic people, toxic places, toxic things, toxic behavior. And when you do, what's on the other side of healing for you? It's, first of all, you get to stop the generational trauma from leaking on to the next. Okay. It ends with you. Well, how beautiful, right? You get to be a cycle breaker. That's amazing. In addition to that, you get to experience more love, more joy, more happiness, more of yourself. You get to be aligned. You get to be real. You get to be who you want to be, whether that's ugly, beautiful, sweet, spicy, salty. I don't know. You get to be all of the things. You get to be all the fucking Skittles and the rainbow. You get to be the whole bag instead of just have to be the red ones all the time because you like the red ones. Oh, you like the purple ones? Here's a purple one. I mean, my God, what a prison. You get to be fully unleashed. You get to be untethered. And the first step is to say to you, hey, I see what happened to you. Can we talk about it? I know you've been impacted. You have shrapnel as the result of being a victim in someone else's internal war. And I want to help you make peace from within. And that's what this book is. This book is a way to make peace with the internal war, the shrapnel that you've been a victim of in somebody else's internal war. Let me help you restore the peace to your family and to yourself. And we become whole. Amen. All right. I think that's it for today. I want you to take this lesson, marinate on it, use it. If you are a therapist, if you're a clinician, if you own a treatment center, please, by all means, feel free to watch this video on repeat. Send this video to your clients and ask them to come to you and journal. If you're a therapist, ask your clients to write these down and come and do journal entries on each page. And week by week, you walk them through a journal entry. If you're a coach, you can use this book with your clients to open up dialogue. You can show them this book to your parents. If you want me to come and speak at your treatment center, I will fly to you. I will hold groups. I will do a weekend workshop on this book for you, for your people. If you want me to come to your church and do a talk talk on this, I will gladly do that for you. We need this book to spread far and wide. We need this book to be the first step in opening the portal to change. We need this book to be the first step in healing generations of people that have been struggling and suffering for just way too long. I want you to join me in this fight. I want you to seek out your inner warrior, and I want you to be with me in this not a battle, but as a what do I want to say here, as a principle of peace, as a teacher of to others of how to heal, and let's do this work together, one read at a time. Again, you can find this book on Amazon. Go get it, leave a review, let us know how it has changed your life or helped you immensely. If you want to buy books for a treatment center, or if you want me to take a bunch of books in your name to a school, to a shelter, to a women's shelter, if you want me to go if you want to buy a bunch of books and have me take them to foster care, if you want me to donate them to school, whatever it is, I'll do that in your name on your behalf. You just have to let me know by contacting me through the website. I love you so much. You can go to HeidiRain.com to learn more. And until then, till the next time, till next Sunday at 1:11 p.m. on a Sunday, Eastern time. I'll see you then. But let's let this marinate all week. Please leave in the comments what this means to you, what it's done for you. Give a whole week to watch this whole entire lesson. Let it simmer and marinate. And then I'll see you next Sunday at 1:11 p.m. Eastern. I love you so much. If you want to go further with me, you want to join Rain Recovery, you want to get certified in our methodology, you want to become a coach for Rain Recovery Systems, you want to learn Rain Recovery for your coaching practice or your therapeutic practice, or you want to start a coaching practice, all these things can be done by contacting me and scheduling a 90-minute consultation where we can talk about your goals, your ideas, your visions, and we can talk about how to make all those things real for you. All right. I love you so much. Take excellent care, and I'll see you next week.